everyone. Welcome back to another edition of the Benchwarmer Sports Podcast. I'm Raffi, as always, joined by Davian. Davian, we just had a lovely Super Wildcard Weekend, and by lovely, I mean every game was a blowout except for Lions-Rams, which was pretty close for the most part, although both offenses...
Hey, I mean, look. The Cowboys kept it close at the end, right? Come on. Give it some respect.
Yeah, they scored a bunch of garbage points to make it look a little nicer, but we all know that the Cowboys...
Yeah, it was
27-0. Oof, Marone, Dak Prescott, and Mike McCarthy's returning. But anyways, before we get into all of that, talk about NFL, even hit on some NBA today. How are you?
I've been good. Been at home, slowly trying to get into college basketball, but it's such a tough realm to really get into. Just as there's so many teams and so many leagues and whatnot, and like right now things don't really matter, but they do, but they don't. So it's like a weird mix. The one thing I will say, and I will need to give a quick shout out to the Cornell basketball team. They just beat UPenn, and if you guys did not know this, UPenn beat Villanova. So Cornell basketball on the come up.
I'm sure you can track that down to Cornell being the best team in college basketball right now.
Yeah, you probably could, but no, honestly, the best team in the Ivy Leagues.
Property.
Yeah, no, the best team by far in the Ivy Leagues right now is Princeton. They're just a team that's, I think they could actually make a run in the March Madness. Like, they are a really well put together team all around, fast, young, everything. But we're not talking about college basketball, and as much as I don't want to talk about the NFL, given the picks I made, I think we need to talk some NFL. First off, I know that I feel like everyone who watches this podcast should follow our TikTok by now. Am I right, Raffi?
Probably.
Right.
What is our username, by the way? Just wondering.
Benchwarmer_sports, just so the fans know. Yeah. Just give it a follow. And if you didn't get through the entire podcast last week, you saw, or you may or may not have seen a pick that I made about the Cleveland Browns, the Dogs of Ohio, who really did not do well. And I saw they weren't doing well, and I remembered, what I said in the podcast saying, oh, I'm about to make a freezing cold take, but actually, no, I'm not going to do it. But then later on in the podcast, I did do it, and I did say the Browns were going to go to the Super Bowl, and they're not. And Raffi made sure to point that out through a TikTok video that he uploaded, which was seen
I'm just shocked you didn't backfire there, because I said the Cowboys were going to the Super Bowl, and you had your opportunity.
See, Raffi, but the thing is,
you just passed it up.
Yeah, but you see, Raffi, the thing is, when you say things, when you make predictions, people, if you've noticed this, comment this down below. Raffi, when you make your picks, you go like, yeah, like I think the Cowboys are going to win, but I really see the Packers also winning. You make it so convoluted, so political, that I don't know as a viewer when I watch you. Like, I know which pick you're making, but the way you word it,
who's really the
it can't be a freezing cold take. Yeah, exactly, Raffi. You're more of a politician than I am. But, speaking of politics, let's just get into it. The politics of the divisional round. So, Raffi, what are your takes?
Not the Republican primaries.
No.
But yeah, that's for another that's going to happen on the podcast. Anywho, first off, thoughts on Wildcard Weekend. Yeah, obviously we both took big hits with our bold predictions, even though I did say the Cowboys. But I'll try to be more confident this time, David. I'm sorry. I'll be more, this is who I'm picking.
Okay,
maybe
good.
Help you out a little bit and
get a little
do some
freezing
anti-Raffi propaganda on TikTok. Anywho, these games all were buns. I don't really want to talk too much about it. Also, before we get into divisional talk, can we just discuss the Dolphins-Chiefs game being on Peacock and how stupid that was? Because that was I will end up maybe not pirating the stream on our website, potentially, hypothetically. I can't confirm nor deny that statement, doing my politician impression here. But the game was terrible, and apparently Peacock was talking about how great it was, but let's be honest here,
it was not.
Streaming games playoff games, putting a paywall over playoff games is going to be the downfall of
it will be. It by far will be.
It's terrible.
It is. I mean, no other sport does this beyond the UFC, boxing, WWE, right? Like all real major sports that have like a certain event and they put a paywall behind it because they aren't able to get a streaming deal like some like the big leagues like NFL, MLB, NBA, NHL. I think it was just stupid for them to stream on Peacock. I personally watched it. I did not watch it on Peacock. I will not say where I watched it, but I did watch it. That's all. I plead the fifth on everything else. But yeah, I mean, honestly, look, the Dolphins just. I said that the weather was going to play a factor, and it did because the Dolphins were unable to run the ball, and because you're unable to run the ball, it's very hard to throw in that type of a weather. And if you're not used to catching a ball like that, it's going to be tough. I mean, Raffi, you and I both come from pretty, cold areas. I think like how hard it is to catch something like in the freezing cold, like in the snow. For our viewers' perspective, almost imagine catching a snowball, like an icy snowball. That's exactly what Tyreek Hill was trying, and at some points did, but at some points also failed because he had a few drops, trying to do. So I think it was just a terrible game. And we almost had a very similar game with it between the Bills and Steelers in terms of icy conditions really playing a major snowy conditions playing a major factor, but luckily they were able to clear out the field by Monday night. But in any case, that's my review on that game. Rafi, you have anything else to say about Wildcard Weekend?
Yeah, not really too much. Again, just very unfortunate. Also, Jason Kelsey pulling a Tom Brady and saying, "I didn't say anything about me retiring. I wasn't saying any. I haven't said anything yet."
Yeah,
I get it, the sources and etc. But I also see him just out of spite of Adam Schefter, which would be hilarious. Just saying going the Tom Brady route. I'm coming back another year, actually, guys, because I get it. I took some time because initially I was like, Adam Schefter is terrible. I hate this man, etc. He's very short. No disrespect to short people like you, Davian. But I really kind of sympathize with Schefter because at the end of the day, it's his job to, like, if he gets on a story, it's his job to get that out. Like, that's why he gets paid the big bucks. That's why he's called. Yeah. He's one of the best known insiders because he gets this information and he shares it with the public. And if he didn't do it, I'm sure someone else would have jumped on that opportunity.
Yeah.
We can get into a whole conversation about media and all that stuff. I'm not going to do that because that's going to be a 2-hour-long tangent that I don't want to get into. But my point is, I understand both sides. I'm always of the belief where, like, Patrice Bergeron, for example, got eliminated by the Florida Panthers, Game 7. Awful experience. I didn't like it as someone who was rooting for the Bruins. But you could kind of tell that he was likely going to retire. But he didn't announce his retirement until June or July. There was no one saying, like, Elliot Friedman, like, one of the biggest insiders, was like, Patrice Bergeron's retiring. Like, I've heard from the Bruins, like, this, he's thinking about it. Like, they kind of just let him do his thing, think about it, and then he came out officially, did a press conference, said, I'm retiring. You don't really see that in the NFL, and it's this balance of you want the story, but you also, I feel like, need to respect the person themselves. When, like, this is a big decision, and as Jason Kelsey put it on his podcast, he's like, at the end of that game, you're so emotional. Like, it's ridiculous to just make a decision on the spot and just say, you know what, I'm retiring. Yeah. Not everyone's like, what's the Bills corner's name, who just decided halfway through the game, like, I quit. It's harder for some people, for most people, to make that life-changing decision right away.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're 100% right about that. I don't think I could add on anything else. I think what you said was perfect. It was just on the point, perfect, on the money. Speaking of on the money, hopefully my picks this week are on the money. I'm going to be less.
Let's get into those.
Yeah, I'm going to be like less, passionate about my picks, so that Raf, you can't really clip these videos because it's not. I'm not going to look like that big. You have to be passionate,
Davian, because we need the passion. I'll be passionate too. It'll be nice. Like, we'll have a nice back and forth conversation. It won't be ESPN. Neither of us are Stephen A. Smith. Partially because I don't really hate the Cowboys enough to be Stephen A. Smith. I even have a Dak Prescott jersey. If anything, I'm anti Stephen A. Smith.
Yeah.
But like we're not going to be ridiculous here. We're not going to be yelling at each other, going at each other's throats. But yeah, let's make some bold picks. Starting off, Ravens Texans. I'm going with the Ravens here. I want to be bold here. I'm going with the Ravens. I am more than happy to be proven.
You're wrong, Raffi. No, Raffi, I'm cutting you off right here because the Texans are going all the way. Yes, you've heard it here first, folks. The Texans are going to the Super Bowl. CJ Stroud is a machine. He is the next Tom Brady. Kidding. There could be no one else like him back there, of my Tom Brady poster. But the Texans are going to the Super Bowl, and let me explain to you why. This team is all around fast. On defense, on offense, they're built together meticulously like a machine that will be able to shut down Lamar Jackson. And the offense will do its job, right? They won't go crazy on the Ravens defense because the Ravens defense is a very good defense, but they will be able to beat them. And they will be going to the AFC Championship game, competing for the Omar Hunt Trophy. And furthermore, later on, the Texans will be competing for the Lombardi Trophy. Thank you. Now Raffi can speak.
I love your enthusiasm, but if the Texans win this game, which again I don't think they will, they will have to go to either Arrowhead or the Bills Stadium to play in the AFC Championship game.
Yeah,
that is not favorable conditions. Look what happened to the Steelers and the Dolphins. That's CJ Stroud's big boy moment.
Okay,
and maybe he steps up. I don't like those odds at all. That's why I think Baltimore winning just puts the Chiefs and Bills. You lose that amazing home field advantage you have if the Ravens were to lose. So I think this Ravens-Texans game, like any playoff game, is a very important matchup.
Yeah.
I think the Ravens' big thing is don't beat yourselves. Don't get injured. Make it out. Like, everything's gone right for them this year, which concerns me because it's like, well, you haven't faced any adversity. Again, bringing up the Bruins again and my past sports trauma. They had such a great year, but they didn't really go through any, are they slumping? Are they going through some trouble? Like, they didn't really go through any turbulence.
Yeah.
They kind of just coasted through the year. And then they got shaken by, a dirty but fair playoff team, caliber team, the Florida Panthers. What happens to the Ravens? The Ravens just had a week off. They rested their starters week 18. Do they have rust? That's a factor as well.
I wouldn't say rust is a factor
in this. Is the
team
are they mentally in the game right away? Another thing. But the Ravens are a much better team. I still think the Ravens are going to win. Who knows, though? I'm sorry for being vague.
Yeah.
Ravens will win, but I'd like to see... There's definitely a route for the Texans to win this game. And then Chiefs-Bills... I'm sorry, Bills fans. I had the Bills going far this year, too. I think I might have had the Bills in the Super Bowl this year. If we run it back, or it was last year.
You might have had them in the Super Bowl, yeah.
Time just becomes one whole unit. I don't even know what's going on. I can hardly remember what happened 2 months ago. Anywho, I think the Chiefs are going to win. They have the home field advantage. And in a Chiefs versus Bills game, I'm taking the team with home field advantage. Flipping a coin, you'd say 5 out of 10 times. But I'd say 10 out of 10 times here, I'm going with the home field advantage. No offense. And not to bring up more trauma for Bills fans.
When I think about this Bills-Chiefs game, I think of Stephon Diggs. Watching the Chiefs celebrate their victory against them in the playoffs. And I used to
have that as my home screen. Got rid of it. 2 reasons. 1, Connor Bedard. 2, you got to prove your point, man.
Yeah.
It was a great picture. It was so cold. I loved it. I love that.
But he hasn't proven it. Yeah.
I'm vibe with that. I feel that. But now it's been 3 years, and I'm like,
yeah.
Are you guys going to...
No, they really haven't proven it. And look, as much as I want to have this revenge arc of Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs, I just don't think it's really going to happen. I'm going to have to go with the Chiefs, even as much as I don't think this team is any good. Look, here's what I will say. The winner of the Ravens... I feel like the winner of the Ravens-Texans game is going to the Super Bowl. I don't like this Chiefs or Bills team either. I don't like either of them.
Absolutely not.
I feel like that none of them are... They're not the teams that they were predicted to be. They are in the position that they were predicted to be, but the teams themselves, the way they operate, I feel like there's a lack of chemistry, and the Chiefs' offense is just... It's just like a boom or bust, really. It's like, will the rookies step up, or will they be rookies? Travis Kelce has not been himself. I'm not going to get into the whole Taylor Swift talk. We could get to that. We could talk about that all day. Which, speaking of which, I did want to comment. Rafi, I don't know if you watched the entire Chiefs Dolphins game, but I did. The end, pardon my French, but I shit you not, for 10 minutes, they would not stop talking about Taylor Swift. And I mean, they would, show the play. They wouldn't even show a replay of the play. And just immediately cut to Taylor Swift. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm a fan of her music. You can call me a Swiftie and whatnot all you want. But it was very frustrating as an NFL fan trying to watch football. And I can't imagine for the people who are watching through Peacock, paying to watch this game and ending up, having to watch Taylor Swift. But in any case, I'm picking the Chiefs. Yeah. Okay, now let's hop over to the NFC. Rafi, what are your picks?
Yeah, and I kind of had the Chiefs-Dolphins game on for a little bit just to answer your point that you were making. I mean, again, the Taylor Swift stuff is kind of getting out of hand. I'm sorry, I'm going to draw a line in the sand here and say this is ridiculous. But, I was watching the Dallas Stars versus Chicago Blackhawks in my defense, which the Blackhawks scored a goal, which they've been averaging essentially a goal like every night. And honestly, at this point, I've been watching if the Blackhawks are on during the playoffs, I'm watching the Blackhawks play. Like, that's just, I'd rather watch a regular season Blackhawks game, especially in comparison to this past weekend. I watched Blackhawks Sharks for 2.5 hours. That just shows you how
that's tragic. That's
not a lot of people. That's a tough watch, man.
That is tragic, Rafi.
You know what? I love this team more than anything.
I don't know about that, Rafi. That sounds very tragic.
I'm just that committed. Or I'm delusional too. But yeah, let's get
delusional. I am as well.
Back to the NFL. NFC, Packers, Niners. I'm going to go with the Niners here.
Yeah, I am as well.
I think if the Niners had that weird streak of that lull of 3 to 4 games towards the end of the season, I'd consider leaning towards the Packers. But again, I feel like history is going to repeat itself. I think the Niners are going to beat the Packers again. I don't really think it's going to be too close. I think Jordan Love's going to have not a great game. But at the end of the day, too, sorry, I wanted to fix my camera. Pardon that. I think the Niners are just better than the Packers. I think they're going to overwhelm the Packers.
Yeah.
And you know what? I think all Packers fans are okay with this outcome. This isn't 2 years ago where it was like, okay, we're running out of time with Rodgers. Our window is closing. We don't have, this is it's okay if the Packers lose this game. It's okay if Jordan Love has a rough game.
Yeah.
This is, one of the youngest team to ever make the playoffs. They have so many young pieces. Jordan Love, even if he has a bad game next week, is still the guy in Green Bay. I think he's proven that to all of us this year, to much of the discretion of all the NFC North fans that aren't Packers fans. So Packers fans, just enjoy it. I don't think it's going to go your way, but again, it's not something to be it's not a make or break game for the Packers.
Yeah, it's not.
They've done so well this year. So
it's absolutely not.
I think regardless, you're going in with house money. I think they're going to get their butts handed to them, but it's okay. This is a game where it's if this is a blowout, if out of all these games, the Packers and Texans, if they get blown out, it is what it is.
Yeah,
it's not the end of the world.
It's not a game.
Such young teams.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead, Rafi. Yeah,
and we get into this discussion where it's you see the Bengals go all the way to Super Bowl, and you have this mindset too. Atlanta Falcons, Carolina Panthers. Wow, they made it to the Super Bowl. They're such a young team, but they never make it back. And that's another discussion too. But the Packers and Texans are so young too, where it's they have their window is just starting, so they have plenty of time to make it to a Super Bowl.
They really do,
so
yeah.
That makes me feel a little better. So that's my cap there, and then I'll give a pick for Buccaneers Lions as well. I think it would be very Lionsy if they lost, but I just think the Lions are gonna beat the Buccaneers this year, and this is my picks now. If the Texans beat the Ravens, you can have C.J. Stroud potentially in the Super Bowl versus, right now it's either Jordan Love, Brock Purdy, Baker Mayfield, or Jared Goff. That is the most random 4 quarterbacks. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I love it. But it's just...
Yeah, no, it's great.
Aaron Rodgers? No, he got traded. All these... partly it is because all these quarterbacks from the NFC got moved to the AFC, but...
Yeah.
Mr. Irrelevant, guy who hasn't played for 3 years, first season he's played, Jared Goff, no offense to Jared Goff, And then Baker Mayfield, who was a cast-off by the Browns a couple of years ago, was in Carolina last year, was on the practice squad, I think, too, for
he played scout defense.
1 game away from the NFC Championship game.
Yeah.
And it's because of him. He's been that good.
He's
been that good that his team has gotten all the way this far, which is why he's better than Tom Brady, and Tom Brady's a system quarterback.
Whoa. All right. Relax there. Relax.
That might have been...
Let's not... Look, I'm as delusional as you, Raffi, but let's not be stupid out here. Speaking of not being stupid, I'm going to go with these 49ers. I've been saying since day one that this 49ers team is going to go to the Super Bowl. You could run back the tape to our NFL predictions video, and I probably said it at least 5 or 6 different times. That they're going to be the number 1 seed. And I was 100% right about that. This team has lived up to their expectations so far. And I don't see that Packers really playing spoiler on that. Now, you could probably clip what I just said, Raffi, and make a very good TikTok if the Packers win. But I'm going to go with the 49ers. Who's next? Okay, so this Buccaneers-Lions game is really... I'm really on the fence about it because the Lions played well, but they didn't dominate. You know what I mean? They didn't dominate the Lions. It was a very close game throughout. Now, you could say everything you want about the Eagles really being a dysfunctional franchise heading into the playoffs. Everyone knows how they lost, the last 6 games of their year of the season. But I do see the Bucs really keeping it close. I just think that Ford Field is going to be it's a Ford Field, yeah. Ford Field is going to be absolutely rocking. You're going to see the same Detroit loyalty that came out last week. But even if the Lions lose, they've already done so much this season. Winning the NFC divisional, winning the NFC North, being able to, play in a playoff game and be able to win in it as well, I think is just massive. So, the only teams that concern me, Raffi, I think this to kind of wrap up our predictions, and you could also have your comment. I think the only thing that will concern me is if that out of these playoffs is like what are the Rams gonna do, right? And the Cowboys, which seems like they're sticking with Mike McCarthy. What are the Eagles gonna do because they just became dysfunctional at the end? But beyond that, I think that all these teams really right now who are in the playoffs are very young. Except for the Bills, I would say. The Bills and Chiefs, I feel like that whoever loses that game is going to have to self-reflect and figure out, what they need to do better. Especially the Chiefs, because they do not have... Mahomes has nobody to throw to, basically, right now. Except for Rashee Rice and Travis Kelce and Marquez Valdes-Scantling, kind of. I don't really,
No. That's a deep shot drop.
Yeah.
Automatically. You throw that deep, and he will be dropping the ball.
Yeah, like Kadarius Toney.
If anything, then that guy is, he's getting paid $18 million. And honestly, at this point, you might as well just pay him his salary to drop the ball to 2025 at this point.
Honestly,
that's how bad he's been and how good he is at dropping the ball. Let's move on, because I did tease that we were going to talk a little bit NBA.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit.
So we're going to talk a little bit NBA. First off, big trade earlier today, or big trade per se. Pascal Siakam gets traded to the Indiana Pacers for 2 guys that Bruce Brown I've heard of. Jordan Nwora, if I said your name wrong, I'm sorry, but you got to be better for me to put more practice into saying your name. So 2 guys who I think are just bench players, if anything. They're nothing really special. But the big thing is 3 first-round picks. Honestly, I've seen a lot that this was a fleecing by the Pacers. Again, I am a pleb when it comes to NBA talk. But anyways, I still know Pascal Siakam. I still think this is a good pickup for the Pacers. The Pacers, very young team. They're making nice progressions over the past couple of years. And it feels like, I guess in hockey terms, this is one of those final pieces you put in place. The Blackhawks when you got your Marian Hossa. This is a move for the Pacers where they're okay, now we're starting to try to build up into becoming a formidable contender in the NBA.
Yeah, I mean, I will say... Sorry, I'm just losing my train of thought. Look, I don't think it was a fleecing, really. I think that the Raptors need to do this trade, and I think the Pacers did good. I think that they are able to, the connection between Siakam and Tyrese Halliburton, I think that's really going to help them out, down the stretch this season. And it's a game-changing, move for the Pacers because they finally bring in a piece to get them hopefully out of this mediocrity that they've been experiencing for at least the past decade. And they can continue building. They also did not give up any of their key young pieces, and I think that, such as Miles Turner, Buddy Yield, other players as well. So I think that look, I'm not the biggest expert on all things NBA, but I do follow it to an extent, and I will say I think that this is a fairly fair trade. Yes, I do think that the Raptors won this trade, but I think that was a very fair trade overall.
Yeah, and again, the thing too for me is just seeing how first round picks are really valued in the NBA, especially if a team is trying to contend in a playoff team. It feels like those first round picks kind of just get tossed around for no reason.
Yeah.
You see the Thunder of a couple years ago where they were just raking in first round picks for.
And now they need to trade them away because that's how many they have too many basically.
Exactly. So the value of the first round picks was something where I was a little concerned with, but at least he got something for him. Again, Davian, the Raptors kind of needed to shake up. They're kind of due for one, and the Pacers are a team, as I said, who are looking to make steps on and on. Let's move on, though, to teams that are much worse than both the Pacers and the Raptors, and will likely not have to really worry about even building up for the playoffs since they're already at rock bottom. We have seen some really bad teams in the NBA. Obviously, the Pistons went on their infamous, really long losing streak. The Wizards are only at 7 wins. Hornets are only at 8 wins. Spurs at 7. Trailblazers at 10. And from an outsider perspective, I just don't get how the NBA can continue to feed these teams and these matchups to us when there's these teams are terrible. And we were talking about this before the podcast. If there was a Victor Wembanyama or a really good number 1 pick that's a franchise changing player, I get why all these teams are bad. I don't know, maybe it's just rebuilding is a little different in the NBA in comparison to NHL, NFL, etc. But I mean, some of these teams have just been terrible this year, and it's borderline unwatchable.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean...
And it's the 6th in the league, too. It's not it's 2 teams just terrible like baseball normally. You have the Athletics and insert other team that just happens to not spend money that year. But this is terrible.
Yeah, I think it's really bad. The Blazers, the Pistons, the Wizards, the Hornets, the Spurs. I mean, I think the Blazers just got their 10th win recently. It's sad to watch these teams. Better's paradise because you could bet on the Pistons. You could bet against the Pistons money line and you'll always win. So we do not promote gambling whatsoever. But yeah, no, it's bad. And there's honestly, look, I've been just starting to get into watching college basketball a bit more than I did in the past, and I just don't see anyone that's wow, yes, I need him, I want him on my team. I mean, what are you trying to go for, Zach Edey? Come on. This upcoming draft is not that great, at least on paper, as of now. It's sad to see. I think it's very sad to see. I think it's also goes to show, if you look at the teams that are not doing well, and a lot of them are small market teams for the most part, right?
Yeah.
Portland, Detroit, Charlotte, Washington, D.C., San Antonio, right? Those seem when you say those cities, you think oh, those are pretty major cities, but they're really not. The major cities are L.A. now. New York, Atlanta, those are where players are trying to go. Those are where players are going. Miami, sorry. Completely forgot about Miami.
Chicago.
And Chicago. My bad. I'm sorry, Raffi. I'm sorry, okay?
You can't just leave out Chicago, but continue with what you're saying.
But point being, also, these teams don't have money. They don't, they don't have Clippers money to throw around for these players and get a crazy luxury tax and be able to pay it off because they have a billionaire owner. These teams don't have that. These teams don't have billionaire owners. Well, I mean, I'm sure some of them do, but it's not to the extent that some of these teams have, James Dolan and whatnot. Well, James Dolan sucks. I hate it.
Yeah, and it's one of those things too where right now the NBA is definitely I mean, Portland, San Antonio, you don't really have the competing like NHL, MLB, or really anything. But like right now, the Red Wings are currently in a playoff spot. They're top three in the Atlantic. You'd have to imagine that some of these Pistons fans are like, you know what? I kind of want to pay. Let me start getting into this hockey team that we have here too. All of a sudden, because this team, storied franchise, original six. But the key thing is, they're winning. They're
Yeah.
gearing up for a playoff spot. And this is something that I hope, and again, I don't like to capitalize on other people's downfalls, but the NHL needs to make sure that they're pushing Red Wings games right now. As much as a Chicagoan, I do not like the thought of that. You need to be pushing that. You need to be pushing out Alex Ovechkin. These Wizards fans have seen no success throughout their entire lives, essentially. Push the heck out of Alex Ovechkin. Get them interested in hockey. Charlotte Hornets, Carolina Hurricanes are literally in the same city. Watch the Hurricanes. They've rebuilt their fan base used to be nothing a couple of years ago. People were saying, "Oh, they should go to Hartford." Now they're huge, great fan base, huge fan base. The NHL needs to try to get these in these cities where their NBA teams which are just terrible. The NHL needs to put an emphasis on, hey, the Pistons are terrible, but the Detroit Red Wings right now are a young, fun team that are gearing up for the playoffs and have Patrick Kane and Alex O'Brien. Sorry, don't want to cry, but that's kind of what I'm hoping for, at least, where the NHL for once can execute on things. Another thing too, before we close, I will say the nice thing about the NBA right now is just looking at the standings. You have the Timberwolves in first, the Thunder at second. You have the Pelicans and Sacramento Kings. Kings are still doing well. They were good last year, and they're back in the playoffs. So it's nice to see. It's kind of refreshing, where it's
See,
not like the Lakers are
different
still in the
teams.
play-in, but Golden State's not even in the play-in right now. So it's kind of nice to see some new teams, at least, in the playoff mix, at least.
Yeah.
At least.
Yeah, one thing I will say, Rafi, is that although, we're seeing these abysmal teams, and as you mentioned that, like, for fans, like, for the NBA, it's a bad look in general. The NBA in itself is growing to a degree that, it was just a year or two ago, Rafi, where we were talking about how the NBA is just unwatchable. I've been watching a few games lately, and it's been fun. It's exciting to watch. There's defense finally actually being played to an extent, right? Like you see high scoring games, and you definitely see blowouts a lot more now than you did in the past. But it seems like even in every blowout, there seems to be at least somewhat competitive. And let's talk about quickly, like it's right now it's January 17th, so January 16th, yesterday, the Suns played, and they were able to almost come, I think they did, or they almost came back from a 20-point deficit with the last 8 minutes in the game. So every blowout, everything that seems like a blowout could be, easily you could come back from it. But one thing I will say, the in-season tournament, I think that was the name of it, was an absolute massive success for the NBA. To make it.
Oh, it was.
You have 82 games, right? How are you going to make people watch those games? It's very hard. The same way I think, you look at the MLB, you have so many games in the season, it's hard to watch every single game. And the NBA provided an incentive for that. And that's all I have to say really much about the NBA. We can, dive deeper into, what teams are on the up, what teams are on the down, but it's January. We haven't even reached the trade deadline. It's not worth it to talk about that.
Yeah, and I agree. This is, again, another topic. Hopefully Theodore will join us for this. Three of us on the podcast.
Yeah.
But the Big Three era, is it officially dead? Are teams done looking at super teams? Like, again, the Thunder don't really have a Big Three. The Grizzlies don't really have a Big Three. Like, it's a team built upon a solid starting five, and then you have some solid bench players. We're not really seeing... Like, I guess the Bucks are kind of a Big Three still. Sixers are kind of, but you don't have your Kevin Durant, James Harden, Kyrie Irving. Like, it's died down a bit, and I think that's contributing to, at least, although there's teams that are terrible, like there's still like some more even playing fields where you're seeing teams like, okay, we don't have 3-4 superstars. We need to play very solid defense. We need to play together, have good chemistry, etc. So that's something I want to talk about on another episode. Anyways, I will end off with this. You mentioned an in-season tournament being really good. NHL, come on. We need to have like a New York triangle between the Rangers, Islanders, Devils series. That could be really fun. Battle of California. You have the Ducks, the Kings, the Sharks. There's matchups. Battle of Alberta. you can make some of these regular season games amp it up a little bit. Maybe you turn into like what we see overseas in England, where you have some little cups, and it's not much at the end of the day, but you can kind of get those rivalries going again.
Yeah.
And then you kind of up the meaning of and up the value of some of these games, which I think is an intriguing thought. But we can talk about that later in additional podcasts.
Yep.
Obviously, there's so much to talk about. As you mentioned, college basketball. I'm finally in college basketball mode now that the college football playoffs is over with. So we'll be getting into that soon because March is just around the corner, and I can't wait for that. So we hope you enjoyed this edition of the Benchwarmer Sports Podcast. Subscribe to our channel. We're going to keep posting every single week. Have a good one. I'll try to get some more stuff up too. Obviously, if you want some shorter stuff too, my Peter Mrazek memes as well. Check us out on TikTok, as Davian said earlier, Benchwarmer_sports. For Davian, have a great weekend. Enjoy divisional weekend. And yeah, have a good one. See ya.
Peace.